Imagine being most of the way through a cornetto ice cream when suddenly someone snatches it away just as you reach the best part, i.e. the chocolate-tipped cone at the bottom, and loudly announces that they would be eating that part for you. You'd be furious, and rightfully so. Crazily, this kind of thing happens in video games all the time. You'll slog away at an entire campaign putting up with fetch quests, irresponsible escorts, collectathons, or pedaless platforming, and when you get to that big bad boss at the end of the level, the game steals the chocolate tip. There are countless bosses in modern gaming that have been reduced to quick time events, or simply press X not to die situations, but there are some encounters that are even less involved, and their deaths occur without any player input whatsoever. Maybe I'm just being greedy, but when everything in the game's delivery implies a particular baddie is going to provide a great challenge, it being reduced to watching your ultimate antagonist defeated in a non-interactive cutscene can feel incredibly anticlimactic. My name is Rach and welcome back to WhatCulture Gaming. These are 9 incredible video game bosses you never got to fight. Number 9. The Humongous Mecha. Alice Madness Returns. In this wonderfully dark version of Wonderland, Alice and the Mad Hatter are making their way through an industrial factory when they are cornered by the March Hare and the Dormouse, piloting a giant, imposing mecha robot. They taunt the player, picking up Hatter with a hook, promising to destroy us. Well, what you are promised isn't always what you get. In one of those blink and you'll miss it moments, Hatter frees himself and manages to instantly destroy the mecha with a giant teapot, killing its pilots. That's it! No epic, insane battle between a handful of fiction's most iconic characters. Originally, the mecha was supposed to be a boss battle. It would pound the ground around Alice and she was supposed to shoot at its chest to defeat it. Maybe the dev team ran out of time to put the fight in, maybe the fight was just too frustrating for the early game, and perhaps the team wanted to subvert the cliche trope of having boss fights at the end of the level. Whatever the reason, the whole thing feels very sudden, jarring, and completely unfair. Number 8. Andrew Ryan, BIOSHOCK. For most of the way through BIOSHOCK, you are hunting down Andrew Ryan. Truly an intelligent and formidable foe to be reckoned with. As you come closer to finding Ryan, it certainly seems like the game is deliberately preparing you for a tough boss battle by placing tons of ammo and medkits in the lead up to Ryan's boss room, a telling sign in most video games that we are about to be in dire need of these items. But it turns out, we don't actually need any of them at all. Before we have the chance to do anything, Ryan ends up committing suicide by forcing you, his brainwashed illegitimate son, to savagely beat him with a golf club. All of this is done in a non-interactive cutscene to demonstrate just how much you, just like Jack, are completely hopeless and this whole situation is entirely out of your control. Yes, I get that the whole point was to hammer home that you had no agency in the altercation, but come on, it's the dude behind one of the most iconic locations in gaming history. Number 7. SAREK the Deathless, TRINE. The final boss, SAREK, the skeleton wizard, makes a great big song and dance around the final level of TRINE. He is constantly berating your heroes, flying around you, summoning various objects to hinder you as you try to climb a tall industrial tower. Climbing the tower itself is no mean feat, and getting to the top will require some speedy puzzle solving and quick reflexes from your 3 soul-bound heroes. When you finally make it to the top, your heroes are separated at last, and SAREK flies in for the kill, heading straight for the thief, when, suddenly, the knight smashes the boss in the head with his hammer, bringing a very swift, anticlimactic end to the threat that required precisely none of your input in the end. If he was that fragile all along, couldn't we have just hit him in the head to begin with? It probably would have only taken one well-aimed arrow. Never mind, though. Number 6. Dr. LOBOTO, PSYCHONAUTS. Dr. Caligosto LOBOTO is a mad ex-dentist whose hobbies include brain extraction and flaunting his knowledge of dental medicine. He forces his assistant, Shigor, to bring him brains so that he may use them to pilot his death tanks, a noble, villainous goal. He is the main villain throughout most of the game, and his eventual demise just doesn't quite fit with what we were expecting, but it does emphasize just how bizarre LOBOTO was, and Psychonauts as a whole. Shigar brings Loboto a brain, but it is in fact the brain of her beloved turtle, Mr. Pokelope, who commandeers the death tank and knocks the Doctor off a cliff with the equivalent effort of a sharp poke. It's a ridiculous, dramatic, over-the-top sequence that, although admittedly being fun to watch, is disappointingly out of your control. We do get to give Pokelope's brain a little leg up into the death tank, but as far as taking down the villain goes, it would have been great to be the one to kick Loboto right in the shins for all the trouble he's caused. Number 5. Trager, Walker, GLUSKIN, BLAIRE. Outlast. In Outlast's defense, the game doesn't exactly let you have much say in any of the enemy's various demises. Playing as a journalist with no means of defending yourself means that you much prefer running and hiding to actually engaging in encounters. As such, when Outlast's big baddies come at you, more often than not, they'll meet their demise through a usually pleasant little cutscene rather than requiring you to hammer the nails in their coffins yourself. Richard Trager, self-proclaimed surgeon and stealer of fingers, meets his end by very intelligently deciding to stick his upper half through an elevator door as it is descending. Chris Walker, aka Strong Fat, ends up shielding you from the supernatural wall rider that shreds him to pieces through an air vent. Eddie GLUSKIN, the groom, who appears in Whistleblower, a lonely chap who just wants to settle down with the right women, becomes the victim of his own trap as he tries to hang protagonist Waylon. Jeremy Blair, Waylon's ultimate antagonist, is ripped apart by the wall rider right in front of his eyes. This is one of the rare cases where we're not actually too bothered that the game decided to kill these bosses for us. We'll take any and all help we can get in this absolute nightmare of a game, even if that means sitting watching the big bads get shredded to pieces with precisely zero input. Number 4. Harley Quinn, Batman Arkham Asylum. Trapped inside Arkham Asylum, you and Batman will make your way through the treacherous halls as you search for the Joker in order to free the captive Commissioner Gordon. After an epic boss battle with the Scarecrow that both challenged usual video game tropes and personified Batman's ethos perfectly, players were ready and waiting for the next boss battle with Harley Quinn to be equally as brilliant. It wasn't. We battle our way through tons of her goons, avoiding electrically charged flooring and completing her sadistic tests, all for her to be bested in a cutscene. Maybe Warner Bros. Didn't want to let players beat up a mentally unstable girl, maybe Rocksteady ran out of time during development, but whatever the reason, when you catch up with Harley Quinn, Batman takes the reins and swiftly knocks her down. That's it, no epic boss battle, not even a quick time event. She is completely subdued in a tiny cutscene. At least we can take a revenge pop at her in Arkham Knight. Number 3. AL-ASAD, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. One thing that Call of Duty does very well is maintain a sense of realism. However, with this, the game sacrifices any hopes of ever having both challenging and convincing boss fights. Empty a single magazine into a guy's chest and he's not going to exactly come running at you with a surprise second health bar. Usually the best we can hope for when we finally catch up to the villains is a quick time event, and in the game's defense, these are usually done very well. However, it does not excuse the fact that we are denied any kind of satisfying challenge in taking them down. Tearing through scores of their minions to then defeat them simply by pressing X a few times is anticlimactic. However, one boss that requires absolutely no input whatsoever is Modern Warfare's Khalid Al-Assad. Al-Assad is the secondary antagonist overall, but was featured as the main villain in the first act of the campaign. He is found, captured, and is brutally interrogated before being shot right in front of your eyes by Captain Price. You'd think we would be used to this with Call of Duty's history of non-existent boss fights, but you can't help but feel a little bit robbed. At least let me aim and pull the trigger. Even Fable 2 gave me that. Number 2. Charles Lee, Assassin's Creed 3. You may have heard various pop culture villains refer to the chase as the best part. However, in video games, this really isn't the case. In Assassin's Creed 3's final crescendo, the chase is all we get. After berating us for the entire game, Charles Lee takes off like a squealing pig as soon as he sees Connor coming after him. You'll chase him for what feels like an eternity before a scripted event sees you fall through a wooden roof, injuring yourself. You'll then get the pleasure of watching a cutscene as Connor suddenly shoots the gloating Lee, who staggers off once again. How nice of the game to let us pick up the chase, although this time badly injured and limping, as we follow Lee to Fort Monmouth, where we are treated to, you guessed it, another cutscene as Connor finally finishes off Lee. Unforgivably, the game takes from us all the excitement of this encounter for itself and leaves us with the painfully slow crawl of just nudging Connor along towards his destination. Number 1, Songbird and Comstock, BIOSHOCK Infinite. Swooping in and claiming the number 1 slot on this list has to be BIOSHOCK Infinite. Infinite's attempt at recreating the iconic Big Daddies from BIOSHOCK 1 and 2 manifests itself as a giant, screeching metal bird. Songbird was all over the game's marketing as this big, intimidating boss that we all couldn't wait to best in a battle of bullets and vigors. Having found Songbird's whistle that lets them control the aviary tin can, Booker and Elizabeth use Songbird to help them take down a giant zeppelin. Booker loses control of Songbird's mind control whistle and the great metal bird comes flying towards them. Elizabeth teleports the three of you to the underwater city of Rapture, with Songbird outside in the fatally crushing water pressure, where he quickly dies, alongside Elizabeth's sad, comforting gaze. Although an incredible game through and through, it commits this crime of boss fight robbery not just once, but twice. The game's ultimate antagonist, the Prophet Comstock, is also killed in a cutscene completely outside of our control. To be fair though, he is about 90, with all kinds of cancer eating away at his insides, so he probably couldn't have put up much of a fight anyway.